Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Ariella Shoham, and I lead the marketing for our software monetization business unit. Welcome to the third webinar in our business transformation series. Today we have Steve Knoll with us to talk about automating back office processes. You are all on mute. If you have any questions, please use the questions chat box on the bottom right hand side of your interface. So over to you, Steve.
All right. Well, thank you, Ariella. So as she mentioned, this is part 3 of our transitioning to a software-centric business model series. So if you've been with us for all 3, and hopefully you have been through part 1 of embracing the shift as we take the move, and part 2 of changing business models. What we're going to talk about today is automating your ordering and fulfillment systems as we go through. So brief agenda of what we're covering today. We're going to talk about the operational challenges that of course face anytime we're making any change or shift in what we do. We're going to talk about the opportunities you have to automate some of the processes within this transition, what those benefits are in automation, what the Gemalto approach is towards this process, and special live demo today. We're going to talk and actually show live some of the automation that's possible and key takeaways. Now, of course, there are questions and answer section through this. So if you have any questions as we go through this presentation, feel free to go ahead and post those. We will deal with those when we get to the end and answer any questions that you may have. So when we look at operational challenges that exist in your business model, and specifically as you're looking to transition your business model, the top one of that is customer dissatisfaction. And obviously customers can be dissatisfied for a lot of reasons. Some customers may just be dissatisfied that you're making any change, even if it's for their benefit. But there are some specific things we're looking at. Slow delivery. If a customer places an order and you have to wait for it. I know myself when I go online and order something, especially now with Amazon next day or same day ordering, I'm getting used to that, getting things almost instantly, even physical goods, especially software, I expect to have immediately. So if you're not able to fulfill that, that can be a problem. An inconsistent user experience as well. If sometimes I call in and I get great support, and sometimes I call in and I get okay or poor support, that can really be a problem. And you might ask why that's a problem. Well, Harvard Business Review did a study in a report a couple years ago. Basically, the results of that showed that customers who had good user experiences spent about 140% more than customers who had a poor experience. In addition, customers who had poor experiences were 58% less likely to renew. And in a recurring revenue model, that's a really key stat. Revenue recognition is another operational challenge that people are facing, not just revenue of creating and selling, but when can you actually recognize that revenue when it comes in? Most of us are used to customers being tardy or delayed in their paying of bills, 30 to 60 days. But let's say a customer is delayed 30 or 60 days in paying, and it's another 30 or 60 days before you can recognize the revenue, can really put you behind on the balance sheet and kind of in bad standing with your board. So a couple of the things you can do to help speed these processes up, and obviously if we're shipping hardware or software to end customers, that can be problematic because we have to wait for that shipping time before they can get the software to do things. Typical software revenue recognition rules require that the customer have the ability to deploy and use the software before you're able to recognize. So if you're able to make that software instantly available to the customer so they can download it and make their license keys available so that they could deploy it, then you're generally able to recognize revenue, in some cases, almost instantaneously. The third challenge we're looking at is usage data. there's several pieces of usage data that can be available and useful for several different things. And one is simply to check and make sure that your customers are utilizing their software appropriately. Here, typically license abuse is done inadvertently. Customers deploy on a second server when maybe they weren't allowed to, or maybe they've deployed to some remote employees that they shouldn't. Being able to track that and understand is really important. There's a lot of missed revenue streams. If you understand how your customers are utilizing your software, you'll understand that maybe the remote users are using the software very differently than the on-premise users. If we can look at that data, we could design our software to take that into account, or develop some selling and billing methods that would better recognize that revenue that we have. And if you have customers with a lot of shelfware, they're not going to renew those licenses as they sit there. So understanding that your customers have actually purchased software, have actually activated and deployed that software is important as well. So talk about some automation opportunities now. One of the really interesting things as we look to automate in this case, supply chain, we're talking about the digital supply chain. The term digital supply chain was coined in 2001 by Tony Hines. He had written a book, and there was a chapter where he talked about transitioning the traditional supply chain into a digital supply chain. And if you think about it, back when we were all making widgets, and those widgets had to be, designed and then developed and then shipped, so we had to move them over to shipping, and they had to be packaged and they needed to be shipped out. It was a very different model than we have today with digital assets. So it gives us a lot of opportunities. For example, revenue opportunities. Because software and other digital content can be downloaded instantly through a website, we have the ability of self-service. A customer could simply come to a portal and enter some information and download that. But we also have concepts like fractional ownership or per use or per click functions of software that allow people to, again, purchase the way that they want to purchase and use the software, which can drive additional revenue opportunities. And we do have the ability to automate many of the processes that in the past were truly, mechanical processes. Moving that widget from the manufacturing floor to the shipping department, may have taken a forklift to move that item over. That's not truly the case with a piece of software. So from the point that that customer comes into a website and clicks a form that says they're interested in your software, that data that they enter in that form can go into the CRM system for marketing to send them information, for your salespeople to follow up on, and ultimately, if a sale happens, to transfer that into the order system as well. So all of those processes can be automated and integrated. One of the systems we're talking about are those back office consolidation systems. And again, in a physical sense, having different systems for these different items, having, the shipping department had their own system, and the manufacturing system had their own stuff, and the accounting, they had their own software. Those days are slowly fading away because, this isn't a ledger book anymore, that if somebody has access to the accounts, they can see everything. We can limit through users what they can see. So it's easier for us to consolidate some of these back office systems of CRMs, ERPs, accounting systems, shipping and billing systems as well. All of that leads to ultimately what we need, which is a good customer experience. Anytime we have air gaps in any of these processes we've talked about before, or a place for a customer to fall into one of those gaps, when they fall into that gap, they have a bad experience. And ultimately, this is the thing that we're trying to eliminate, going back to our previous discussion we had of looking to get those customers to have good experiences and spend 140% more and not have a poor experience so that they renew with us. As we continue within the digital supply chain, and we're looking at the business application landscape across here, I'm going to start over on the far right-hand side of your screen with the CRM customer interactions. When we have, Salesforce and a Salesforce that's out communicating with customers, whether those are distributors, vendors, your own salespeople, or online, we typically have some marketing activities that are going on. So the marketing team is going to have a group of prospects and suspects and hopefully turn those into leads for your sales team, who then need to have that interaction. At the point that they create an order, we want to be able to have that information that's in the CRM flow to that ERP order system that's above that for fulfillment. Once we've fulfilled that order, that needs to communicate with the entitlement system. Now we're over on the licensing and entitlement side on the top. We need to produce the license that customer would use, provide the software that needs to go along with that, and interact with any warranty or SLA contracts that are necessary as well. And again, all of this data should flow from an initial input from the CRM. Once all of these items are packaged together, we can electronically deliver them to the customer. This is right in the center of your screen on the bottom, where we're going to deliver those items. And unless we're using a traditional kind of perpetual licensing model, which hopefully we're transitioning away from, we're going to be able to look at the usage and tracking data of what's going on, how those customers are utilizing our software. And if this is a portion billing and what you do, we can actually take that usage data, pass it off to the billing system to create an invoice for that customer as well. So the digital supply chain really is just reimagining what we've always done with physical items and moving it into the digital realm, where we have a little more control and a lot more automation opportunities. So let's see how that continues with the software go-to-market. A systems approach that exists when we're looking at taking a piece of software or a product and putting it into that digital supply chain really has these 5 steps, and we're going to walk through these 5 steps and we go through. Keeping in mind what our key challenge is seamless integration, so that we don't have any of those air gaps that our customers fall into. So step number 1 in the build stage. When we're looking to build a software product, there are many people and many groups involved, but at a high level, we're really looking at product management, engineering, and operations at this point. Product management's responsibilities, not only taking the idea and the concept of what we want to do, and they need to go out and get their market research and develop, what would be the best pricing, how do customers want to use the product, what problem is it solving, how are we going to package this? Are we going to have a bronze, silver, gold kind of package, or is each feature priced individually? Are we going to have it as a software as a service, or is this going to be an on-premise installed software? All of these decisions need to be made. But once they've made those decisions, they can turn this over to engineering, and engineering needs to develop those items and make that available in how they do that. And the operations team needs to create the SKUs that we're going to be able to sell, understand, the whole product life cycle that's going to happen. How do we handle returns? How do we fulfill this software? All of those things that need to be created in operations. Now, the reality is, all of these items we've talked about could be written down in notebooks or on a whiteboard, but I think we all agree that's not the most efficient way to do that. Ideally, what we need to do is track all of this in a single product life cycle management system, so that we have visibility and other groups can see what's going on. So as product management creates a new feature that they want to package, operations is able to see that to make sure that they create that SKU and assign that pricing so that that can be handled, and engineering can see that that item's happened as well, and therefore they're able to develop it correctly. Now, step 2, the sell stage. Selling is hard, as we all know. We spend a lot of money and effort to support our sales team, but that's the engine that drives our business and almost everyone's business. And when we look at this, there are, again, certain focuses that we're looking at in the back and front end applications to drive this part of the go-to-market strategy. In this digital age, online ordering is an important feature. You know, having a customer who can go online and click a button and say, I want to order your product and here's my credit card, and download that item is really important. We also need to make sure that we've modified and updated the CRM and your ERP systems, because we need to be able to share that data back and forth, because the timeliness of these orders is something that we're looking at in seconds or minutes now, not days and weeks as we would a traditional manufacturing environment. Maintaining the entitlements. This is kind of a new system for folks. You know, if you're building pipeline stuff, it's not so much of entitling that hardware, but it is something that we need on the software side in what we're doing. And we want to make sure that that system is tightly integrated as well. And billing systems. Now, many folks in the past have always used an ERP system or an extension of that for their billing. And what we find with a lot of our customers today when we talk to them as they're moving to new recurring revenue models is that their older billing systems just are not designed for that and can't keep up. So they're integrating new billing systems as well. So on this page alone, what we're looking at are 5 different systems where information needs to be manually entered. And that's 5 opportunities for someone to make a mistake. 5 opportunities for a customer to fall into a crack and have a dissatisfied customer in what we're doing. So again, one of our key success factors here is, you know, integration, tying these systems together so the data gets entered once and gets carried over. Now, we also need to have some firewalls in here. And by firewalls, I mean some checks for errors in the order. You know, the customer online may have ordered something that they don't really need or that is inappropriate for their deployment and what they're trying to do. We need to have some logical checks to make sure that that's appropriate. And the same to our CRM system, ERP systems, that if these components require another component and that wasn't ordered, we need to make sure that gets flagged so that we have a complete order for the customer. So again, opportunities to automate, but also fact check when we go through to have a correct and proper order for the customer. Our third stage is the fulfillment stage. And again, how hard it is, you know, to find a customer and convince them to buy and then actually sell to them. If we don't deliver properly, this can ruin all of that effort that we've just spent. And this is the time for us to really, you know, recoup that investment that we've made. So making it easy to download the software, to install the software, to provision the software is really a key component. So starting with product downloads, making that software available for people to download and re-download, even for things like trials and evaluations or purchasing. The concept of just in time. So, you know, there may be a case where a customer needs to use a new feature, and we could do an in-app purchase where they could go out and simply say, hey, I didn't think I needed this feature, now I do. They can go ahead and click a button, enter their information, activate that feature, and begin using it right away. And again, there's no sense in stopping to go look for another product who can do what yours can already do if we can make it easily available for them to do that. Entitlement distribution. So many folks, and this gets back to the selling, as we said, we sell several different ways, through distribution, direct sales team, online. If you're selling through distribution, one of the real Achilles heels that has existed in that distribution model is loss of visibility once those products are sold. So if you sell 1,000 units or 1,000 seats to a distributor and they break those up into chunks of 100 and sell them to different customers, you don't always know who they were sold to or when they were sold or at what price they were sold. And so you've really lost visibility. So being able to maintain that visibility and see those items, which kind of comes into registration and activation as well, making it easy for that customer to not only register products if you require that, but also to activate those products so they can start to use it. This is the stage where you really want to ask yourself, what needs to be delivered to your customer to consider that order fulfilled? The software, the licensing, training manuals, how do they need to get those? And is the registration and activation for your customers easy or another point of dissatisfaction for them? We now move to stage 4, and this is the maintenance or maintain stage. So we've sold the software. First we built the software and it's everything we thought it would be, and we're able to sell it to the customers, and they've downloaded it and installed it and used it. Now we need to maintain that customer, continue the life cycle of that customer, and also maintain their satisfaction, because we want them to continue to renew and use our software. We want them to continue to purchase and grow the use of that software that they're using. This stage focuses on some additional back office solutions that may need to be utilized as well. Things like a case management system. If we have a customer who has an issue, they found an undocumented feature, or they have a problem, they need to contact your support team, they need to be able to do that in an easy way. And ideally, they need to do it in an easy way where they have true visibility of everything that's going on in their systems, and they can get near real-time notifications back to them. Product notifications. You may have software that's expiring for the customer and you need to let them know it's time to create a new PO to re-up that. We may have a critical fix that we need to do and software needs to get deployed. So how are we notifying folks about the product? And that usage data. One of the interesting things where almost all of the customers that we talk to want to capture usage data for their own use, for their analytics. What parts of the software the customer using, how much are they using, whether they're billing them for it or not. Capturing that data is important. But we find that most of their customers as well want that usage data. If you're a billing person or a head of a department who has software, you can justify that expense by having the usage data showing how important that piece of software is to the core business and how it supports that. So usage data, not only for you as a vendor, but also to your customers, is an important piece of this stage as well. And our last but not least stage here in the go-to-market lifecycle is the renewal stage. Remember what our focus has been all the way through this process: customer satisfaction. How do we maintain the highest level of customer satisfaction? As a software vendor, if you think you make a feature and that feature is important to the customer, it's really not. It's how that feature solves a problem for your customer and makes them happier and makes their job easier. And so it's maintaining that whole concept through this. And if you focus on the customer experience, you're almost never going to make an incorrect decision as you go through this. So this particular stage is really focused on those post-sales sales activities that we would look at. So subscription management, how do we go about selling a new customer, and making sure that they renew? hopefully, if that customer is happy, they're going to continue to renew outside of other outside forces or changing business model that they have. But hopefully, we've had the usage data that you've been able to track that, and you've been able to communicate with the customer beforehand to find out what's going on. Digital signing. Again, there are many very nice systems out there now that will allow you to create a user agreement, send it to a customer, have them electronically sign that again in minutes, and allow for quick deployment of that software, and again, quick revenue recognition of that process. It isn't unusual for recurring revenue model contracts to be an evergreen contract. Basically, it's integrated auto renewal into it, that if we're not notified X days before the end of the contract renews and continues. And it's also really important to make sure that your customers are aware of the different business models you have, because again, you may lose a customer because they're going to someone else to buy in the way that they want to buy, maybe moving to a software as a service or a recurring revenue or a per use model. When you have that, but you simply haven't shared that with the customer because they've always been a perpetual customer, and you didn't want to upset the apple cart, you just maintain the status quo. Sometimes you lose customers because you're not doing that. Keep in mind, recurring revenue models only work if they renew. So our next step we want to talk about is the benefits of automation. And to highlight that, we're going to walk first through a kind of traditional quote to fulfillment process. So what we see on the screen right now is kind of all of the end pieces of a business. We have your end customer on the upper right, your sales rep kind of more to the left, and the rest of the pieces. So as we walk through this process, the first conversation is going to be your sales reps communicating with the end customer. And your sales rep may be communicating with sales admin inside to say, is this the proper software, and all of that business logic that we need to put together a proper quote. And the sales admin will generally create that quote, or the sales rep creates that quote. Once that quote's created, sent back to the customer and accepted, we're going to, of course, that data is, activated or entered into the ERP system. And once the order is created, that order gets passed off to your license admin, who needs to go into your license generator software and create the license key and that license file that you have. Generally, that data then has to be rekeyed back into the ERP system so that we now have an order and we now have kind of what was fulfilled in that order. If we're in a traditional solution, again, shipping CDs or DVDs, we might be shipping a hardware key, locking, or a dongle for that. That has to go to the shipping department, then get sent to the customer. I'm kind of exhausted after that slide. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of moving steps and a lot of places, again, where we can have customer satisfaction issues or problems. All of these interactions, all of these data entry points can all be problematic. If we look at an automated fulfillment system, what we've done is eliminate a lot of those manual key entry steps. So on our right-hand side in the center, we still have our sales rep communicating with the user, who enters that data into the CRM system. That CRM system, at the point that we're creating that order, will automatically pass that system to the ERP system, which can automatically communicate that to the entitlement management system, which will, again, talk to the license generating software and create a entitlement ID or an EID. That's our step number 4. That gets delivered to the end user or the license administrator on the customer side, who can then take that EID and enter it into your software application to communicate back to the entitlement system to generate the key and install that, or the customer could go through a portal, a software portal, and enter that information and get the license key that they would deploy within that system. So as we see, the number of interactions between people and data entry is much lower in what we're doing, and to really focus on removing the manual, time-consuming, error-prone processes that was in that last exhausting slide that we went through. Now, anytime we have a sales order system communicating with an entitlement system, there are certain pieces of data that we need to make sure carry across. And automating this process is relatively straightforward, but it is important to keep track of certain pieces of data. So if we can see over on the left-hand side, regardless of the system you're using, if you're using Salesforce or NetSuite or Oracle or SAP or Great Plains or any other software system for your ERP, there are certain key pieces of data that you're going to have. You're going to have a sales order, and you're going to have an in-customer name and a contact and the quantity of products and the actual product that they purchased and all of those items. When we create an entitlement, we're going to pass some of that data and use most of that data to come over, because now we've tied these orders together. We have an order number, as you can see, that we store in our reference ID, and we can always go back and forth and make sure that we have that proper information. So some of our key components of this automation is no manual data entry going back, a much quicker and more accurate fulfillment, which should lead to some better customer satisfaction, and repeatable processes. So whether you're a small startup or an established enterprise company, there's nothing that your venture capitalists or boards of directors like better than a repeatable, scalable process. Because once we can do this, if I can do this with one order, I can do it with 100, I can do it with 1,000, I can do it with 100,000 orders with no additional internal overhead, which is really going to help drive margins and, again, increase that customer satisfaction. The other piece of automation that we're looking at is integrating with the install base. And just to explain that a little bit, new order automation is great. A new order comes in and it flows right through the system. It's kind of like printing money, because a new order comes in and people have to touch it the least they have to, and everything kind of works and it flows right through. However, there tends to be more money inside your install base than there is with those new sales coming in. So when we look and tie this and look at the integration with the install base, we can see that here, in this case Salesforce, what we're able to do is pass the activation data from the entitlement management system back into Salesforce, which allows your sales team to see how much of the software the customers are using, what's been activated, what hasn't been activated, why hasn't it been activated. We could call those customers and say, hey, why haven't you deployed this software, and what can I do to assist you in getting it deployed? Again, making a happier customer in what we're doing. Additionally, being able to run reports to say this was activated a year ago or 2 years ago, and maybe it's time for an upgrade in what we're doing. So we have visibility to see those items. So talk a little bit about the Gemalto approach in how we approach licensing, and specifically licensing automation. So Gemalto software monetization components are really, we break those into two different components. The entitlement management section, which is really the licensing back office. This is the part that's going to interface and talk with the CRMs and ERPs and billing systems, and really keep track of the whole life cycle of that entitlement. Generate the license keys, capture that license usage data, and make available that software to be instantly available to customers through electronic downloads. Now, on the license enforcement side, this is where we're protecting your software, not only the usage of that software and misusage of that software, but also the protection of the IP. So keeping people from reverse engineering your software, locking it appropriately so it can only be used on the machines or networks or by the people that you want to use that. Again, collecting the usage, controlling what features are available, all of those items there. Those are the two main components. Now, if we look at this slightly in a different chart, we can see there in the center the entitlement management system along with the license generator sitting right in the center. Now, everything on the top is your back office, where you make those software downloads, your billing systems tie into that entitlement management system. To the left of the entitlement management system, we have the web portals. So again, instant access for your customers to come in and be able to see their entitlements, download that software if they need to redeploy, rehost those items, all of that there. And to the right, we have these key generators. Our philosophy for our entitlement management system is that it is an agnostic system. So we not only work with our own license generators, but we work with your license generators and other license generators as well. It isn't unusual that a customer of ours has been using another system before. So we're able to now integrate those key generators and continue to support their existing customers. And maybe down the road you gain an acquisition and you bring on a new company and it has different licensing structure. Well, it makes it much easier to integrate that into your entitlement management system that is already tied into all of your other back office systems. And if you can do that quickly, you've really saved a lot of money. The lower row we're looking at there are all of the different types of things that we can protect, from basic software applications, on-premise servers, intelligent devices, restricted footprint items, those kind of Internet of Things devices, mobile devices, all of those items are protected through the Sentinel solution. Now, if we focus down and we're looking again just at the entitlement management system here again, this is where we really, if we go back to the slide we talked about in that life cycle management on the build component, where operations is looking like how do we keep track of our products and what we do. Well, here's the product catalog where product SKUs and license definitions can be created. Now, these items can also be created through integrations back to the ERP system. So operations group may only enter these in the ERP system, yet an integration could automatically create those here in our entitlement management system. The same with customers and contacts, can be created on demand or preloaded. Entitlements that we have, as they are created, of course, they're kept track of, but we could import those items as well. The channel functions that we talked about, being able to take a group of license, provide those to a distributor or a channel partner, and have them be able to break those apart and go through. Activating the licenses, all of those items through the system are for sure possible in what we do. Now the integration, specifically what we're going to demo here in just a second is tying the entitlement management system to your back office. So the key components we want to talk about here is this is an automated workflow. This can be done both as a push or as a service so that it's working all the time. It is a bi-directional transfer of information, so we're able to take information from your CRM or ERP and move it into our entitlement management system and take data that is created there and move it back into your system, providing customer notifications and all of that integration. So what we're going to show today is this workflow with Salesforce.com. So with Salesforce.com, there's two specific workflows that we're going to show, and I'm going to talk about those workflows first, and then we'll go through and actually go through those. The first is very simple. We're going to create a new entitlement. And again, some key benefits of integrating this are efficiency gains, ensuring the data integrity because it's not being rekeyed, speed in the sense that it's instantly created. We don't have to wait for someone else to get around to key that order in and do that. And ultimately, as we said, reducing costs by eliminating that as well. So the basic process that shows here is, again, in the back office, the data will be entered or that order will be placed. That order detail will flow into EMS, create the entitlement with that unique entitlement ID. That email gets sent to the customer. The entitlement ID gets transferred back into the ERP system, or in this case, CRM with Salesforce, and we'll be able to see that item. The second piece that you're going to see is syncing the activation data back to the CRM. So once we've created that entitlement, I'll go ahead and activate that entitlement, and then you'll be able to see that activation details show up again. And again, key benefits here is not only data accuracy, but I think the most important is the data visibility of your customers to see those items back in. And here's our chart to kind of detail that of what's happened. That entitlement will have been created and placed. The customer will activate that, and then that will show up in Salesforce. So with that, let me go ahead and jump into our demo here. So we're logged into a demo instance of Salesforce here, and there are a couple different tabs across here. As you can see, we have our EMS connector configurator. This is the part that actually does the work of automating and transferring that data, and we have our create EMS entitlement, which I have right here. I've pre-filled this out. What the customer has ordered are 8 of the products that we're looking to do. We are not requiring user registration. The software start and end date starts today, and it lasts for 1 year. This is our contact person and the account, the webinar customer that we have. And the products that they want is, we're going to buy the business transformation product and the business transformation service. And I'm going to go ahead and create that entitlement. Oop, and I see I'm just going to need to log back in here. So when we go to our entitlement, same information we had. So 8, I'm going to say it's not required. We're going to pick today and 1 year from today. I will enter in my contact's name here and email. And pick our account, which is our webinar contact. I'm going to add our products. So there is our product and our service. And I'm going to go ahead now and create our entitlement. Now, as this entitlement's getting created, and you can see that it has been created, I'm going to also go ahead and activate that entitlement. So if a customer were to come in and activate our entitlement, we would then be able to come in and see that on the account. So first, let me go to the account and show you here on this webinar customer that we have our new entitlement that was created. So I'm going to view all of our entitlements, and of course we're using this across all of our team. So here is the entitlement that I just created starting this year, ending next year with our activation count of 8. I'm going to, as the customer, go ahead and activate that software. And in order to do that, the customer would lock this to a specific machine that they have. So I'm just in the background entering that locking code information through the portal. The customer goes ahead and activates those items. Now I'm going to show how this would sync the data back by using the connector information that we have here. So if we just move this back in time a little bit and just forward in time a little bit, and I'll go ahead and start that activation. And I'll do the same with bringing the activation data back. And we'll start that synchronization. Once a synchronization is done, and again, this would be automated in most systems, and in our demo system here, we have it as a push button so we can see those items. Once the synchronization is done, now when we come into our webinar customer, and if we pick that specific entitlement that we've done and looked at, we can see the activation detail as well. So this was information that was created in our entitlement management system and brought back into the CRM so that your salespeople would be able to see that, how many credits they have left of that software, how many seats of that software they have left as well. And last but not least, all of that data is reportable. So within the system, we can look at activations and when software was activated so that we can present that customer or that information about those clients to your salespeople who can then pursue that and continue to look for those internal opportunities. So with that, that kind of hits the end of our demo. I will ask if there are, again, any questions that that anyone has at this point. And Ariella, do we see any questions pop up?
No, but I love the demo. I think it's really, it really shows how all this comes together. So we don't have any questions, and that's fine because we're actually very close to the 45-minute session. So it's totally fine that we're here, and I think
Excellent.
we can jump into our summary just to stay on track with.
All right. Well, if you watch this, and maybe you're watching the recorded version of this, and you do have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd still love to hear your questions. So feel free to shoot us an email or give us a call. We'd talk about that. So as we summarize what we've talked about today, we've talked about increase operational efficiency. And that's the goal of automation, is to make it faster, quicker, easier, better as we go through this. So centrally managing disparate licensing technologies is a key component of what you're trying to do, and getting the operational staff to focus on what their core competencies are and what they're really trying to do, not doing manual data entry throughout that. Which moves us to cutting out those manual processes because of reducing the cost of having all of those extra bodies keying in data and the time delay and all of those items, along with revenue recognition through that. Ensuring the data integrity, and now we want to talk about improving customer satisfaction. And as I said, this is a key component of everything you should be doing, is focusing on that customer satisfaction. If we enable their ability to do self-service and access the data and things that they need, and that will help them provide that consistent experience across all of your products and really provide a much better customer experience. So with that, I will say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate giving us the time to take a look at this part 3 of our business transformation series, and look forward to seeing you at part 4. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, everyone, and see you in part 4.